Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Historia Politica Publica. In the episode of today, I will talk about Emma Goldman, the anarchist who lived through the 20th century. She was born in 1869 and she had a prolific life. She organized over 10,000 meetings. She became a public orator in America and Russia. She wrote over 2,000 pamphlets. And in this episode, I will focus on one of the essays that she wrote, which is called Anarchy, What It Stands For. It is included in the book Anarchism and Other Essays, which it was published in 1927. So here there is a compilation of 11 different essays, including emancipation of women, marriage and love, the role of drama for emancipation, and also the one that I'm going to talk, which is Anarchy, What It Stands For. So, who was Emma Goldman? She was born in 1869 and died in 1940 during the Second World War. She was a Russian-born anarchist, political activist and writer, and she played a pivotal role in the development of anarchist political philosophy in North America and Europe in the first half of the 20th century. Emma Goldman was born in the current Lithuania, which at that time was part of the Russian Empire, and was born in a Jewish ghetto where her family ran a small inn. At 15 years old, her father tried to marry her off, but she refused to do so. And it was eventually agreed that this child should go to America with a half-sister to join another sister in Rochester in New York. This is important because it kind of saved the thinking of Emma Goldman, and her writings about marriage and love and emancipation of women, the suffrage and so on, were clearly influenced from her upbringing and also what she saw later in New York. Goldman quickly realized that for a Jewish immigrant, America was not the promised land of opportunity. In fact, for Goldman, America was slums, sweatshops, and she was working as a seamstress, and she could barely survive with the poor wage that she was earning. When she was around like 17, 18 years old, there was a moment in America which kind of directed her in the progress to become an anarchist. The thing is that moment was the Haymarket Square tragedy in 1886 that happened in Chicago. Because of the poor conditions in the workplace, the workers held a protest rally calling for an 8-hour day. A bomb was thrown into a crowd of police during the rally and 4 anarchists were eventually hanged. Convicted on the flimsiest evidence without proof, the judge at the trial openly declared, quote, "Not because you caused the Haymarket bomb, but because you are anarchists, you are on trial," end quote. In other words, these people, even though there was no proof that could make them guilty, there was no evidence that they have committed this crime, because they were rebellious, they were people who wanted to change the society in which they were living there. They were to be tried and be killed. And this is important because Emma Goldman, who followed the event intensely, and in that day on the hanging, she decided to become a revolutionary and turn her mind to anarchism. By that time, Goldman was 20 years old and had been married for 10 months to a Russian immigrant. The marriage had not worked, and she divorced and moved to the New York City. And there she started to make public meetings, organize different events, taking care of many people, had some differences of thinking about the different movements. So, for example, she wanted the overthrow of capitalism and believed at the time that the 8-hour day campaign to work were a diversion for the real objective, which was to create an egalitarian society. And the thing is, like, with the interaction that she had with different people, she changed her mind, which I think this is an important aspect of Emma Goldman. As an anarchist, in one of her essays, she points that anarchism does not show a kind of ironclad dogmatic rules to be followed, but rather it's a process that is constantly changing according to the needs of societies, the different people that are involved in the movement, and so on. And here we have a good example, because when she was in Buffalo conveying a message in a public meeting saying that fighting for reducing the working hours to 8 per day, it was like something distracting for the real aim. But at that time, she was challenged by an old worker who asked her what men of his age could do then, because they were unlikely to see the ultimate overthrow of the entire capitalist system. In that sense, Emma Goldman was thinking like, okay, maybe this person is right, because obviously capitalism is not going to be overthrown in just a few years. So if she thought that if she was conveying the message that fighting for small gains was a mere diversion, then these people could not fight for it. So this encounter affected Goldman, and she took the old workers' question on board. Then the anarchist Emma Goldman realized that specific efforts for improvements such as higher wage and shorter hours, far from being a diversion, were part of the revolutionary transformation of society. In that sense, she started to change her approach and become aligned with the ideas of Peter Kropotkin, the anarchist of whom I have talked in other episodes, that wrote The Conquest of the Bread, Mutual Aid, and many other books. And in that sense, she sought to balance the inclination of human beings toward the socialism and mutual aid which Peter Kropotkin stressed, with her own strong belief in the freedom of the individual. In fact, there is a famous anecdote about Emma Goldman in which she was taken aside at a dance by a young revolutionary who told her one did not become an agitator to dance. But Emma Goldman replied, quote, I insist that our cause could not expect me to behave as a nun and that the movement should not be turned into a cloister. If it meant that, I did not want it. I want freedom, the right to self-expression. Everybody's right to beautiful, radiant things, end quote. In other words, for Emma Goldman, the importance of kind of express your human nature, like the right to be free, to have sex, to socialize with people, to read books, to play games, it was fundamental for the anarchist movement, rather than this idea that we need to kind of see the revolution as a kind of job in which we need to focus only in that situation. Emma Goldman believed that revolution and the freedom of oneself were interlinked totally, and in fact it was the latter, the ideas of on energy, that had the boost in order to spark the revolutionary ideals. In that sense, for that, Emma Goldman is right widely about the right to have fun and so on, and that this was part of the whole movement. In other words, anarchism doesn't mean a kind of a revolutionary dogmatic movement, but it is a way of life that affects every sphere of the population. In that sense, in her essay Anarchist, What It Stands For, it is interesting because she points many of the objections that anarchism has faced for many years, and that if we think are still current in 2023. She points to objections of anarchism that was said in those years, like at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, which were that even though anarchism, it is a beautiful idea, it is impractical, and also stands for violence and destruction. But Emma Goldman replied to those kind of objections. First of all, she says that, quote, anarchism is practical because it is helping to do away with the wrong and foolish, and it is building and sustaining a new life. So she refers here that what is impractical is the current system in which people are oppressed, are exploited at work, and they are basically living in a huge prison in which they are not able to choose anything. She gives a lot of examples with marriage, like something like if a woman is married with a man and is not earning a salary, what will happen if they get divorced or if the man abandons her? That she will become destitute and with no means to survive. In that sense, anarchism, on the contrary, proclaims the equality of every people, equality of opportunity, the right to provide a decent living for everybody and engage with everybody, try also to boost the people on nature, the wonder to learn more, to stay with other people, but also to choose your way of life. I mean, if you want to live in isolation in the mountains or in another place, you don't need to be forced to stay in society. So this is the idea that first of all the important is yourself and at the same time the society. So those things are linked together, and Emma Goldman point here in a very nice way how, let me check the quote. She says, yes, here that the solution of that evil, which is capitalism, the state, and the church, I will touch about that later, can be brought about only through the consideration of every phase of life. This is important. Every phase of life for her means the individual as well as the collective, the internal as well as the external phases. In other words, it's important to discover yourself through your own self-introspection, but also engaging with other people and the internal and the external. So the society, save yourself, but you also have the power to save your surroundings. So this is a kind of harmony between yourself and the outside and so on. And anarchism is trying to create this harmony between every person in the society. So at that time also Emma Goldman wrote many important insights about what means anarchism. And for her, anarchism means, quote, anarchism urges people to think, to investigate, to analyze every proposition, end quote. In other words, it is an ideology which takes care, tries to learn from everybody, and it is fundamental, the unwilling to wonder, to discover new things, and so on, to develop your mind, and also to help other people to do so. For her, anarchism is the philosophy of a new social order based on liberty and restricted by man-made law. The theory that all forms of government rest on violence and are therefore wrong and harmful, as well as unnecessary. In that sense, for her, the main evil is the economic one. So how can we defeat this enemy, which is the slavery to the wage system, and also the thing that money creates this ideology in which it is like the secular religion of nowadays? How can we defeat this? For her, again, is that through the consideration of every phase of life, the individual and the collective, the internal and the external phases. So if we want to change the alternative mode of production and overthrow capitalism, it is important that people gather together and think about what will happen next. So it is not just about making a revolution and destroying the current system, but thinking ahead what can be later created. Even though anarchism implement this idea that the new society will keep developing along the way, and it is not worthy to follow dogmatic rules, but still it is important to think ahead of different scenarios that can happen later on once a new kind of system in society is implemented. But this is a contrast of Marxism, for example, in the way that this idea that was following dogmatically in the 20th century, that first of all it was important a bourgeois revolution and later on a proletarian revolution. Here it is more kind of having discussions in every phase of life, and in that sense helping to build a better world. So she speaks also about the individual and social instinct, how she makes a genealogy about how the primitive man developed on blind forces, and this is the origin of religion according to her, how people in the past saw the wind, the storms, the sea, the fire, and believed that this was the kind of the masterpiece of some kind of god. The problem of that is that depending on superior forces, which was believed that happened in the past, it has kind of go through the ages until nowadays, and she called it this leitmotif, how the man to God, to the state, and to society have linked together. And she said, quote, man is nothing to power, the powers are everything. And leaders have always the man surrender to the people, being the God in the ancient world, then the modern state, and now the contemporary society. In that sense, she conveyed that the message has always been that, quote, people can have all the glories of the earth, but they must not become conscious of himself. Quote, for her, it is the key thing that has made religion, the state, capitalism, the kind of masters of the slave people. And in order to defeat that, it is important to give priority to the knowledge of different people. If people can read or people can help between each other to understand the complex world, this will help everybody to realize what is going on and how people are being exploited by an unfair system. But education, it is primordial for Emma Goldman and for the anarchists in general, as we saw in the Kropotkin episode, but also people like Bakunin, people like Albert Camus, George Orwell, also Daniel Guérin, Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson. All of them agree that anarchism it is related with education. In that sense, there is a quote about Emma Goldman who mentioned precisely the importance of anarchism in that sense, and how many anarchists agree, even though there are different branches of anarchism, and also anarchists in fact believe that every person can have a different idea. She points that, quote, all anarchists agree in that stand for the spirit of revolt. So, in other words, anarchism believe that it's important to change the current mental paradigm, the cultural hegemony that has permeated in our society. So this spirit of revolt can be in different ways. And Emma Goldman points, for example, that not every person, even though they are anarchists, can have the same ideas of how to progress. And she gives examples of famous people like Tolstoy or Bakunin or Kropotkin. She says something like, we cannot equalize the ideas of Tolstoy, which is more calm, more serene, rather than with Bakunin or Kropotkin that are more kind of fighters, more like more straightforward in the approaches, but still all of them, they want to change society. And it is reading Tolstoy, Oscar Wilde, Percy Shelley, how these ideas are portrayed, even though in different ways, but still with the aim to establish an equal society in which everybody has real participation. In that sense, Emma Goldman in other of their essays give a great role to the arts, to the culture, in order to save this cultural hegemony in society. In that sense, for her, quote, anarchism is the only philosophy which brings to people the consciousness of themselves and is the teacher of the unity of life in nature and in the people. The teacher, the word here emphasizes again the importance of education, and for that reason she also dedicates one essay to Francisco Ferrer y Guardia, the Spanish kind of thinker who created the modern school at the end of the 20th century, beginning the 20th century, and who was killed by the Spanish state because he was falsely accused to instigate the revolution in Catalonia. In that sense, he kind of epitomized this idea of Emma Goldman of education in order to expand the different ideas. And this modern school had many differences with the traditional system of education in every country. Like, people were allowed to stay more time outdoors, to learning about nature, to engaging with each other. Francisco Ferrer y Guardia, in his book Modern School, speaks about many examples of people, how he was always open to debate with people with different ideas. And precisely this modern school have the aims that Emma Goldman proclaimed in her essays, which are the approach to critical thinking, to engage in conversation, to listen to other opinions, to dialogue and try to understand different points of views. And for example, to understand more about Francisco Ferrer Guardia's work, I recommend to read the Modern School book, which was published in 1908. I think it was published in 1913, after he was killed by the Spanish state. And it was published, somebody looked for his writings and published all together in a book after he died. He's buried in the cemetery of Montjuic alongside Ascaso and Buenaventura Durruti, three people who were reference of anarchism in the 20th century, end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century, first half. And in that sense, also there is a movie which is called La Lengua de las Mariposas in Spanish, in which Fernando Gómez, which is the professor during the Second Republic, basically tried to implement a system of education based clearly on the modern school of Francisco Ferrer Guardia, like teaching people outside with the nature, make them to think critically about what is going around, the importance of not oppressing nature, but rather seeing the whole harmony of the planet within the animals, the plants, all the things that are part of the earth. And in fact, in that movie, Fernando Gómez, who was himself an anarchist, the famous Spanish actor, he had a book in his cell, which is Peter Kropotkin, The Conquest of the Breath. And he grabbed the book, and in the camera you can see perfectly that book. So this obviously is a homage to the anarchist idea of Francisco Ferrer Guardia and also to anarchism in general. In that sense, for Emma Goldman, quote, "Anarchism is the great liberator of man from the phantoms that have held him captive. It is the arbiter and pacifier of the two forces for individual and social harmony," end quote. And here it's important that she mentions pacifier, because anarchism stands for peace. And for that reason, one of the questions that she objects at the beginning, it is that anarchism stands for violence and destruction. But here she refutes this idea and says, no, anarchism stands for a society living in harmony, in synergy with each other, in which there is no conflict, because people know that everybody is important for the development of everybody else, not just for the society, but also when you engage with a person, when you talk and you meet new people, these people can share things with you, share experience that will shape your understanding of the world. So it is this kind of humanistic approach which will help everybody to grow and learn in different things. I mean, think about your life. For sure there have been many people who have had a great influence in your life, and probably people who have been your friends for many years. If you think how these people have changed the way that you think, the way that you approach the world, and it is this important of anarchy. The importance of anarchism is how one person can have a great repercussion in the future of yourself. So the peaceful approach to anarchism is also theorized by Ursula Le Guin, which she loved the ideology of anarchism, and in her books we can see how anarchism permeates all her masterpieces, whether in The Dispossessed more explicitly, but also in The Left Hand of Darkness, and also The World of War is Forest, in which the idea of taking care of nature is immersed in the whole narrative. But also in the day before the revolution, there is a statement at the beginning in which she says basically that Odonianism is anarchism. Odonianism is the ideology of Laia Odo, which is the figure of the revolution. And she points that anarchism is not terrorism, is not destruction, because that is terrorism. But anarchism, she points, that is the heir of the ideology of Taoism, this kind of idea, philosophy to be in harmony with nature, to kind of have a relation with every sentient being in the world, and how important this is for the development of the humans and the other species. At the same time that Emma Goldman declares that anarchism is peaceful and is the arbiter and the liberator, she points that anarchism have declared war on the pernicious influence which have so far prevented the harmonious blending of individual and social instinct, the individual and society, end quote. Which are those pernicious influences that have to be defeated? Emma Goldman points to three. First of all, religion. Second of all, property. And finally, government. For her, religion is the dominion of human mind. Property is the dominion of human needs. And government is the dominion of human conduct. In other words, anarchism is against religion, against capitalism, and against the state. No wonder that anarchism has always been demonized, neglected, and killed by either conservatives, neoliberals, capitalists, and also the kind of state socialists or Soviet communists, because they are against all those ideas stand for. So, regarding a religion, she mentions that, quote, break your mental feathers, says anarchism to man, for not until you think and judge for yourself will you get rid of the dominion of darkness, the greatest obstacle to all progress, end quote. Many things to take in account in this phrase. First of all, the beautiful language employed by Emma Goldman. She uses metaphors, analogies during the whole text in order to engage with different people and make the narrative more beautiful to read. Martin Luther King Jr. has a very similar approach, the use of alliteration, of metaphors, of comparing our current struggle with the ideas of the natures and different aspects is fundamental in their writings, which make it easier to read and also those ideas stuck more in your mind. Other consideration to take into account is that this sentence is very similar to the idea of Immanuel Kant, which in 1784 published What is Enlightenment, in which basically he said that enlightenment is a kind of bravery of people to live out their chains and kind of be learn more about the world. I think literally he says like be brave and learn. So the idea that enlightenment, it is not a kind of education imposed from outside, but rather your own approach to life. Immanuel Kant mentioned that many people are just comfortable to believe blindly in the judgment of others, but the difference is those people who are keen to learn more, to are keen to investigate for themselves, and in that sense they will kind of progress into society. Like this idea that if you are, let's say you are in your house and you don't want to do nothing, or you want to learn books in order to research and to learn more about life. This is people, enlightened people, according to Kant. And Emma Goldman uses a similar language when she says, break your mental feathers. So it's like she's giving an order to yourself, like a warning, same as Immanuel Kant, like when he says, be brave, and she says, break your mental fetters. It's a similar kind of approach to people in order to encourage us, like, come on, people, you need to be free. The social conditions are essential for that, but also it is your own initiative which will help to go out from the darkness that is involved society. And for that reason, Noam Chomsky mentioned that anarchism is the heir of the Enlightenment ideas of Immanuel Kant, of von Humboldt, of Rousseau, of Voltaire, and many others, because it has this kind of emphasis on the importance of education, but not education in the systematic, bureaucratic way in which we go to school, we just study for the exam, memorize the kind of like 10 pages or 20 or whatever, and just pass the exam and after we forget. No, it is education in the sense of the process of life, of keep learning, developing yourself, also later engaging with other people, having conversation and helping each other to build this current in which knowledge is fundamental for the progress of society, because we will avoid to be kind of lied by the elites, and also we will be able to have some alternative for society. For that reason, the modern school of Francisco Ferrer y Guardia was so dangerous for the Spanish state at that time, because it threatened the kind of strict, rigid approach of the schools, and the kind of it was an idea which tried to penetrate into the stultified mind of the people and help those to think critically. And I will think now this episode, but I want to continue in the next one speaking about this essay, because I think there are many points I have not touched. For example, I want to delve more into the idea of religion, property, and government as the kind of a pernicious influence that Emma Goldman speaks. Also, quotes from different people like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, George Bernard Shaw, Bakunin, Kropotkin, and some. So stop here, but the next one will be the second part of this essay, Anarchism, What It Stands For, by Emma Goldman.